Good morning, all. My name is Allison, and I will be your moderator for today's session. It is with much enthusiasm that I welcome everybody to the 2017 Lunch and Learn series, Learning to Heal the Hurt. This topic came about as an effort to provide a public forum in which community hurt could be discussed openly while providing resources and opportunities for community engagement. For the purpose of this series, hurt is defined as physical or emotional pain and anguish. Panelists and participants are representative of many cross-sections in our community. The goal is to share experiences, opportunities, and efforts that exist to help when individuals are hurting. This year's attendees are being asked to take a moment and share what you have learned from healing your hurt on the canvas on the side of the room. Before we get started, I would like to thank Lucky's Restaurant for the snacks, which are in the back of the room, and Sid Gross with the Friends of the CRC for providing us with food as well. So thank you, and welcome to everybody. At this time, I'd like to proceed, and we will begin by introducing our panelists. We'll start with Ms. Chelsea right here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chelsea Getz, and I'm a training coordinator with the Center for Family Safety and Healing.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hannah Thompson. I am a coordinator at the Suicide Prevention Services with North Central Mental Health. We run the 24-hour suicide prevention hotline for Franklin County.
Hi, I'm Linda Caney, and I'm a community volunteer. I'm representing Rise Sister Rise, which I'll talk a little bit more about a little bit later, and the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Central Ohio chapter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Tedding, and I am here representing the American Red Cross Ohio Buckeye region today.
Hi, my name is Rhea Greif. I do 2 weekly shows on our Central Ohio's NPR station, U-Inc. and U-Tune, and I do wellness programming for Insurance Giants. I'm here to talk about how we can elevate our emotional intelligence to help build those bridges to help heal that hurt.
Great. Thank you, ladies. Welcome. Let's take a moment and talk about our target population and whom we provide services to, please.
At the Center for Family Safety and Healing, we like to think of ourselves as a one-stop coordinated response for individuals and families that are experiencing family violence in our community. We do this through a variety of lenses. We have prevention services, we have advocacy services, we conduct research in the community, and we advocate for change. In addition to these things, the goal of everything that we do is to break the cycle of family violence and to restore hope. Our building's a little bit on the unique side because we have a lot of community partners with us. So some of our partners are Choices, the Columbus Division of Police Department, the Special Victims Unit. We also have Franklin County Children's Services, Franklin County Prosecutor's Office, and we also have Nationwide Children's Hospital Behavioral Health, and then our Division of Child and Family Advocacy Center, or our CAC, that sees children. So we have a lot of unique partners in the building that help us get to this goal of breaking the cycle and restoring hope.
Thank you. Ms. Hannah, could you talk a little about your target population, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So for the Suicide Prevention Hotline, anyone is welcome to call us. We talk with people of all demographics, all ages, all races, all genders. We have callers who call from different states, but our specific target population is Franklin County, so that we can provide resources that are local and helpful to our callers.
Thank you, Hannah. Linda?
Yes, I feel like I'm wearing 2 hats today, so I'll start with Rise Sister Rise. Our target includes girls, black girls between the ages of 11 and 18. Girls who started with the Rise Sister Rise as a result of a research project that was done by Principal Investigator Fran Frazier, and to really focus on black girls and trauma and their resiliency. So we continue to work with girls between the ages of 11 and 18 to build their confidence, self-esteem, and for them to use their voice to affect change. My other hat is the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, and we're not a service organization, we're an advocacy organization, and we advocate on behalf of black women and girls to address gender and racial inequities in the areas of health, education, economic empowerment.
Great, thank you, Linda. Jordan?
All right, so at the American Red Cross, our target population is a little bit different than probably some of our other panelists today. Our mission is to prevent and alleviate human suffering, and people typically think about the Red Cross and know, one of many things that we do, and that might be, disaster response, or that might be blood services, things like that. But when you really drill it down, it's those people that matter, whether it's someone who had a home fire and lost their children in that fire. Our volunteers are there to walk them through that process and what that grieving process looks like, or a service member who was killed in action, and helping to heal that family who's still here at home when they're going through that, or parents, new parents who had a newborn who is in need of blood transfusions. Our target population really is anyone in those variety of, and more than that, variety of different circumstances who are going through that human suffering, and we do what we can to help heal that.
Thank you, Jordan. Rhea?
Well, it started with working with professionals of companies, and I realized that a lot of the programs that were offered were programs that could be useful for the general population. So I wanted to make the programs that people pay for, I wanted to make it available to the public. Why wouldn't we have this type of content for anyone to be able to listen to on free radio, FM? And also wanted to reach out to even to the larger populace. So we went ahead and we started podcasting on Google Play and iTunes and SoundCloud and Stitcher. I just think it's really important that we try to make the availability of giving people the tools to enhance their emotional intelligence available as far as we can possibly take it, and not just available to those who can afford it.
Great, thank you, thank you. If we could, I'd like to have a little conversation in regards to why do we think there is so much individual hurt in our community and community hurt. And we can do that as open dialogue, or we can continue to go down the line, whatever feels most comfortable. Anybody want to start?
I'll go ahead and start.
Thank you.
I think a lot of it is about we don't know how to reach out. We're afraid we're going to say the wrong thing. We're afraid that we're butting into someone's business. We don't have the words. We don't have the tools to be able to reach out. In a lot of these catastrophic events that we hear about in the media, one always wonders, why didn't someone say something? Why didn't someone know? So there's a couple things. There's like not having empathy because we're not trained. We're trained to learn how to, do math and do algebra and, how to write essays, but we don't learn how to have conversations. So I think people don't have the confidence to build bridges, and it's not even just bridges with others, it's within themselves. So that intrapersonal intelligence isn't there. So if we don't understand what's going on with ourselves, we don't have the ability to relate to others because we don't have even the empathy and the compassion for our own experiences. So because of that, we have this detachment. For me also, I think screens are creating a larger dam and those larger walls. And so people are losing this connectedness. So people are suffering alone. And I think that's a large part of where that hurt comes from because there's no opportunity for healing.
Great, thank you.
I'll just add that I think some of it stems from individuals and communities experience hurt because we're sometimes pitted one against the other for resources, for opportunities, and simply just for airtime. We live in this world of constant bombardment of information. We're sometimes on information overload, whether it's fake news or from reliable sources. We're exposed to so much information, and that it's there's data, there's everybody's opinions, and sometimes they're contradicting each other, and so a lot of times it's divisive and it's disruptive, and so our conscious mind we get confused as to what's real, what isn't, and what do I really feel about something from a deep personal level when I'm getting all these different messages. So it just adds to our stress. It adds to our anxiety when we look at disparities in justice system, we are divided economically, we're divided racially, and so we need to really make sure that we are speaking out and being supportive of each other, because that's the only way we're going to make it through this.
Right.
I would add that when we think about why there's so much community hurt, I think about the field that I work in with family violence, and I think about how common of an experience it is, and because people think it's common, it's normal that there is abuse in the household. And so we know that nationally, on average, 20 victims are hurt physically by their partner every minute, and that annually that adds up to about 10 million victims per year. And so when we think about how many people are affected by this, it's around us all the time. And I think that people don't feel comfortable coming forward and figuring out, who can I turn to help? Who's gonna believe me? If I share my story, are you gonna be receptive to it? And I think that's where we're starting to see some of this hurt, and figuring out, like, how do we help people get to this path of healing? Because the path of healing can be difficult, but when we have the right people by our side, it's not as difficult. And there's great partnerships in the community that can help with that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, kind of just to go off of that, I think that that is a big part of why there is a lot of individual hurt, is that people don't know where to turn to. They're not sure how to get help for themselves, or if something's happening that they can turn to family or friends for. So kind of building up community resources, letting people know that there is help out there, there's always hope out there, and there is supportive people that they can turn to, is a way that we can start looking to heal that hurt.
Thank you. Jordan?
Yeah, I think, just to expand on what everyone else has said, I think one of the biggest things that we as individuals can also do, if someone comes to us with hurt, oftentimes as humans, we listen to reply and not to understand. And it really is about that understanding. I may not know what you are coming to me with, or understand why you're going through that situation. And I just want to give you a quick reply of, all right, here's how you can fix it. I think, one of the biggest things we can do is, as human beings, is listen to our fellow human beings to understand what they're going through. And that can help heal that hurt, just that one step, because they feel like they're being heard and understood.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Today we're talking about getting involved. Our Lunch and Learn series is dealing with hurt, and specifically, again, today we're talking about getting involved. So what strengths does a person need to help others experiencing hurt?
I'll start. For the strengths that a person needs to help others, the biggest thing is the desire to help others. If you have that desire, then I think there's always opportunities to learn, and places where you can get involved at. But one of the important things to do when you are helping in those areas is practicing self-care. So realizing what your own limitations are, realizing when you might be taking things home a little too often. So making sure that you're keeping up with your own coping skills and, really maintaining that level of self-care that allows you to help others.
Thank you. Very important.
I think one of the strengths you need is to, first of all, acknowledge and affirm the hurt of others and of yourself. Because I think we all have things that we are dealing with, but there's this stigma involved in admitting or acknowledging the hurt. And it's difficult to seek out help if you are in denial that you need help. So I think one, first of all, is acknowledging and affirming that you do have hurt. And then demonstrating patience and empathy and compassion, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to help yourself, but also to be able to give a part of yourself to others, to help them with the hurt that they're dealing with.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's, based on what they just said and building upon that, it really is about finding that compassion and that desire to turn compassion into action, both towards yourself, having compassion and showing grace towards yourself, and to other people around you. If we all show compassion to ourselves, we'll be able to show that compassion to other people. And we have to turn that compassion into action. Our heart can break for something that we see on TV and things like that. We have to have that will to take it a step further and say, what can I physically do? I can, be sad for a tragedy that we see, but what can I do to help heal that and turn it into an actionable step?
Thank you. Rhea, anything to add?
I absolutely agree with the empathy and compassion. Obviously, that's something we need to have. I love that you mentioned self-care. A lot of times caregivers really forget that the most important thing is for them to take care of themselves. Like if you're in an airplane and you're getting the safety talk, they say, if the pressure drops in the cabin, the oxygen masks will come down. If you have a dependent with you, who gets the mask first? You do. Because if you don't, you literally will pass out and not be able to take care of other people. So it's so important. But one other thing that I really want to really people to understand, you can try to do a lot of different things, but really what people want to see is authenticity, to really be your authentic self. And that goes a long way when you're trying to really connect with someone, when you're authentic and sharing, like you said, a part of yourself in that fashion.
I think the only thing that I would add on to all of this is that we believe anyone can be a bystander. We know these conversations are difficult, and we think everyone has the capability of speaking up and speaking out against what they're seeing or to help someone, and you're not alone. So at the center, we developed a first-of-its-kind bystander campaign called Where's the Line? And you can look up on our website, where'stheline.info, to get more information. But it helps people walk through, how do you help somebody else who's going through this, or how do you help yourself? And so we have to have this non-judgmental, caring approach. We want to be authentic. We want to have empathy for ourselves and the self-care. And this is a resource line for bystanders to give them help and to help them feel empowered to say, hey, I can make a difference and I am in the right direction on this. So you can call, text, or chat our line, and you can get connected with our information coordinator right away. And this is a really great resource in our community.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Chelsea. That sounds very exciting. If we could talk a little about our personal journey and how we all decided to get started and involved, that would be fantastic. And I don't particularly care who starts.
So when I saw that question, I thought, okay, how far back do I go? Because I think I've been involved and kind of an activist since junior high, high school.
Okay.
In some capacity, whether it was, being part of a church group or working with a social justice cause or the NAACP or some fashion. I think it's kind of part of my DNA. I'm adopted, and so the parents that reared me were not necessarily community engaged, but I was always the one who was out there wanting to go and demonstrate or do a sit-in or write a letter or whatever. But I know that my birth mother was involved in everything. I mean, she was a Red Cross volunteer. She drove people to the polls to vote. She was recognized as a Volunteer of the Year numerous times. So I know where that comes from, that innate desire to help and to give back. So it's been a part of my being since forever.
Great.
That's fascinating. I love that. I started as an animal activist. I had a strong connection to animals since I was very young. And that kind of graduated into wanting to be in a helping profession. So I became a therapist. I was seeing people and my practice, and then I said, I'm just dealing with one person with their problems behind closed doors. I really want to move away from the treatment end of the continuum and get into the prevention end of the continuum. And so I actually started working with the homeless. I became a certified instructor with the Red Cross to do sexual health, and I was doing outreach to the communities, to campsites. Back when the homeless shelters were downtown, they're all disappearing now. I would go and walk around and talk to people about sexual health and risky choices, and working with people who work the streets also. And that kind of moved into me starting doing group therapy, so I kind of got the bug. And then I started doing wellness programming for insurance giants, so I started traveling Ohio. Now I do surrounding states, and I spoke at some national conferences. And that wasn't enough. And so I said, I wanted to put this on the radio, so that's how I got to where I am today. I just wanted to reach as many people as I possibly could to help prevent them from developing issues, because if we can get people on the prevention end of the continuum, we can, help alleviate people from developing larger problems.
Correct.
I relate to that so much. I, as a licensed social worker, my background and studies have always been in domestic violence. I volunteered on a hotline in my undergraduate studies. Through my master's program, I worked at Choices here in the community. So I've always been working directly with domestic violence victims in some capacity. And I felt like I was doing, I'm working with one individual, I'm solving this, but there's more to it. And so when an opportunity came at the center to get into a training role and do prevention work, I jumped at it because I wanted to be able to talk to more people. And so now I get to go in and I talk to middle school, high school, college students, and we go through what's a healthy relationship. And most of my teens tell me, I know what's normal, but I've never been told what's healthy. And that's astounding to me. And to be able to have these conversations is so amazing. And I do the same thing with adults. And so I go around the community, around the state, and we talk about how do we have healthy relationships. And on top of that, part of this journey for me in networking has been getting involved with the Columbus Care Coalition, an effort led by Columbus Public Health, and really taking our community and making it, instead of me being trauma-informed, we're all trauma-informed, this organization's trauma-informed, we're saying, let's let our neighborhood and residents be trauma-informed. How can we give this knowledge back to them and help them help each other navigate through that, and we can walk with them in this journey? And I think that that's so inspiring, at least for myself. So I relate so much to what's being said.
I love what you're doing. It's
Thank
amazing. I love it.
Go ahead.
So I really discovered sort of my passion for suicide prevention when my best friend attempted suicide. It was our freshman year of college, and I had no idea that she, was struggling very strongly with emotions and with different things that were happening in her life. And so, I found out when she actually attempted, and I didn't know how to help her from there. So fast forward a year later, we, had worked together to kind of find her some counseling options and places where she could get help. And we both decided we wanted to give back to the community, which is when we got involved with volunteering on the suicide prevention hotline. So after, 6 years of volunteering with them, I just really knew that this was the right place for me, because it's somewhere where I could feel that I was helping individuals and, helping them to also realize through, presentations that we do in schools, with presentations that we do at high schools, colleges, different health organizations, that creating awareness helps to prevent suicide by letting people know that talking about it, asking questions, looking for resources isn't something we should be afraid of. It's something that we should, go headstrong into and really look for ways that we can help others, because that's what's going to help to build a stronger community.
Thank you, Hannah.
I had similar situations where I, grew up and volunteered for a variety of different things, church groups and things like that. I found the Red Cross itself when I was in college, and really just fell in love with the mission. And I was a volunteer for several years, and then was hired on as a paid team member. And I followed that as my career because it really is my passion. And one of my, my favorite things about it is getting to see our group of volunteers that come together for one reason only, and that's to help other people who are going through what might be the worst time in their lives ever. And I think that is a truly beautiful thing. And that is what keeps me going every day. That is my passion, is to see that and do that and, work with these just incredible people who are sacrificing their time, giving up their time, like many of you here today, to help other people. And that's really what it comes down to.
Was that it? Did we all get a chance to speak? Okay, great. Thank you.
I think we did.
Of everything that we do, could you identify what is the most difficult part of your job? The most difficult thing that you do?
I I would say for the work that I do is knowing that we wish we could prevent every instance of abuse and violence in our community. And even though we're doing really great work, it's not always possible. But I think what's important is that we are making human connections with people and that we know that healthy human relationships heal trauma. And that, I think, gives me hope for moving forward, that we can heal with these healthy interactions, conversations like today, even if it's just planting seeds. Someone might not leave that relationship, but you've mentioned something. You've become a safe person for them, and that gives me hope. So it's not necessarily the most difficult, but I have to have a good hope spin on it.
Right, right.
I absolutely agree with that. I think one of the hardest things, which you kind of mentioned earlier in the last question too, is that we, as helpers, we might not feel like we're doing enough. We're constantly wanting to do more, and we want to solve every problem that's out there, and it's not possible to do that. So just knowing that even just making a difference in one person's life can ripple through their life and to other people. So it does make a huge difference to even be one support for one person for one day. But I would definitely say feeling like you constantly want to be doing more is one of the most difficult parts.
Yeah, I agree with what's been said also. And for me too, it's working with youth or young people who've been traumatized by adults. That's really difficult. So it isn't anything necessarily that that's difficult for me to do per se, because I'm of an age where if it's too difficult, then I just won't do it, and I'm a volunteer, so I can pick and choose. But that to me is really challenging, to know that we have these opportunities to help to shape minds and development and growth for young people, and we abuse that privilege. And so to see what some of our children and our youth are exposed to, experiences that at my age that I've never even thought about having to deal with. That's really, really challenging, and like you said, wanting to do more to help them to save everybody, to save all of them. So that's the most difficult as I'm working with volunteering with youth and with adults, particularly with women. My thread of my involvement has always involved working with women in their development. I have over 30 years of professional experience with the YWCA, whose mission is eliminating racism and empowering women, and everything I do kind of centers around that. And so, that really, you see and hear about trauma and hurt that women and children experience, and that's really challenging when you really know that that they are precious human beings that we all should be taking care of and taking care of each other.
Yeah, and I think it goes to say when we aren't able to help more and we want to, I think that is one of the hardest things. For me, I think one of the hardest things that we do is deal with things that cannot have been prevented. One of the facets of the American Red Cross's disaster response, which includes things like home fires, which is the #1 cause of death by disaster in the state of Ohio. And the state of Ohio is in the top 5 in the country. And it's pretty high, and some of that could be prevented through education and things like that, and sometimes there are acts of nature that cannot have been prevented, and I think those are the hardest. I've had to attend funerals with small children who passed away, and the parents survived, and it was not something that was their fault. It was just something that it happened. The thing that always brings me back to that hope is that we've got great volunteers, mental health professionals that can work with that family to go through what are the next steps, and how do we get back to our new normal? Is it ever going to feel like normal again? And I think for me, that's the hardest thing that we deal with. Some of the stuff that we deal with can be prevented, and we work through that education process, but it's the ones that just, by some act of nature, it happened, and that's for me really hard to deal with.
So I'm experiencing compassion fatigue just from listening. My hat's off to all you women here, in the trenches, working really hard. For me at this point, I feel a responsibility to make sure that everything that I present is researched, balanced, fair, and peer-reviewed. So I spend a lot of time making sure that I get all voices represented, and that I do it in a way that's using the scientific method and making sure that I'm very careful as to what the messages that go out there are. Because, as you mentioned, there is that fake news going on. We really want to make sure that we bring quality, curated programming that really has value. People like you have those stories to tell, and it's my responsibility to make sure that those get out there. And thank you for what you guys do. It's amazing, amazing.
Thank you, ladies. I'm going to throw a question in there. Sorry. But we just talked about the most difficult thing that you do at your job. Why don't we get back to hope? Because I heard you mention that a couple times. Why don't you share with me what's the most enjoyable part of your job, or what you're doing?
Well, I love everything that I do. It's a lot of fun meeting with people, learning about others. It's great. Reading books is a part of my job. I love it. And I think my favorite moment is when my interviewee says, "That's a great question." So whenever I get that, I was like, yes, I nailed it. But I've been getting a lot of great feedback. My show's only been in production for a year. I started on Thanksgiving as a pilot, and now we are full force, and I'm on Saturday afternoons now at 2:30 and Thursday evenings at 9:01. So I've got some really prime slots, so it's very exciting for me to actually be out there now and to be broadcasted in a very significant part of people's day. So I'm looking forward to having that virtuous effect, being on that virtuous cycle.
Great.
Yep.
I think for me is, seeing that hope come back to the people that we're serving. An example of this is we recently supported Hurricane Irma and Harvey and Maria evacuees here in Columbus. We had several evacuees who come and are actually building a life here in Columbus, which is pretty cool. But when they came, they were very scared. They didn't have much other than the clothes on their backs. There was one gentleman who came from Miami, and he speaks Spanish, speaks English a little bit, was so grateful to the Red Cross. He started volunteering with us the day he got here. He didn't want to be idle, which is just incredible. And he met some people. We showed him how to use CODA and all this kind of stuff. And some people at a school district, I am blanking on which school district it was, saw his story, heard about him, heard about his story, gave me a call and said, "Hey, we've got a job for him. He can be a Spanish teacher in our school district." And it's, seeing that hope come back to that person that we're serving, and then also seeing the community rally around this person. It never fails to amaze me how resilient people are and how resilient communities can be in that time of crisis. And this man was going through a crisis. And it's just, he's doing very well now. He's got an apartment. He's got a job. He loves CODA. And we hear from him, and it's good stuff. So it's seeing that hope come back and seeing the communities rally around people.
Great.
For me, I think what I find encouraging and hopeful and get joy from is spending time with our girls through the Rise Sister Rise program, the girls that I mentioned that are between the ages of 11 and 18. They are creating, 8 of them are creating a think tank around 6 issues that they have identified that girls are dealing with, and they're working on creating a media campaign, an awareness campaign. Their issues that they identified, all on their own, are bullying, self-esteem, colorism, LGBTQ, self-defense, and mental health. And from those 6 things, they themselves, after talking with each other, determined that all of those issues really bubble up to really the overarching theme is mental health. And if they can increase awareness around mental health and remove the stigma that's associated with mental health or seeking out health, that those other 5 things would be diminished. And so they are creating their own campaign, awareness campaign, that will be introduced to the city in the coming months. But to watch the girls process their discussions and their interactions with each other and their dialogue, and they created their own kind of their guidelines as to how they're going to operate, and they stick to it and hold each other accountable. And when they make assignments, if one doesn't do what they committed to do, they check on them and hold them accountable for it as well. And so to watch them operate that way has just been amazing. And if you want to see real kind of democracy and action and advocacy in action, it's the Rise Sister Rise girls.
Wow, thank you.
That's really incredible.
It is.
It is.
One of my favorite parts of what I do is seeing how our volunteers on the Suicide Prevention Hotline grow and develop from their first day of training through actually being on the phone and taking calls. You know, we have people who start out very nervous, very scared because it is a life or death situation sometimes, and they know that they want to help, but they're not quite sure that they're going to be able to do it in the beginning. So to watch them grow through our 50-hour training program, and then actually have a call where, after they're done with the call, they end up contacting me and just saying, I know I just saved that person's life. Like, I know I made a difference to them, and I have never felt better for what I'm doing. And so to see our volunteers grow from, this point of where they're very scared to knowing that they're making a difference is a wonderful thing to see.
Great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I would say, I mentioned kind of my hope earlier, and I guess I'll just repeat mine, is that we have the capacity to heal from our traumas, and that's through human interactions and healthy relationships. So the thing that brings me the greatest hope and joy is every time that I'm giving a presentation or training, that I'm welcomed into that space to have the conversations to say, you matter, you're not alone. How can I help you? How can we walk through this together? And that gives me hope that people see that there are other options and they are not stuck in relationships that are unhealthy or even abusive, that there are healthy relationships out there and that there are people that care about them. And so that's where my hope comes from.
Amazing women, huh? Thank you. What can be done to help us and you, but us as a group, better serve our target populations?
I'll start.
Thank you.
Yeah. We would like people to speak up and speak out against family violence, especially from where we're coming from. We want people to feel comfortable being a bystander and saying that the silence is not okay and we want to break the silence in our community. It can be scary, it can be difficult to call people out, to give help to somebody. You may not be sure what to say, how to go about it, and that's okay. You're not alone. There's so many other people out there facing the exact same thing. But what can be helpful is that when we break the silence, when we say this isn't okay, that we're building up this community to be healthy, that we're building each other up, we're empowering each other. And so we really want people to feel comfortable being a bystander and using our resources. That's why we have where'stheline.info. That's why we made that campaign, so that people can get help in that way. And that's why we have coalitions like the Columbus Care Coalition, where people are coming together to say trauma is important in our community, but resilience is more important. And how do we build each other up so that we all can be resilient, so we can all lean on each other to walk together with this? So, yes.
All of you, as I listen to your organizations, I'm more concerned about what's happening to our girls in the silent years, before they are able to tell anybody that this trauma is happening. And that's 50%. And so when we get them, they're already talking, they're already traumatized, they're already diminished in their emotional capacity. Are any of the girls talking about that?
So I can answer that.
Go
Because I
ahead.
took the question, I'll answer it.
Go
I'm sorry,
ahead.
Alex.
That's okay.
I'm a trainer. I'm so used to taking questions and being like, yeah, sure, ask me.
Okay.
So I apologize if I messed up the forum. What we say, like, I walk into a room and I know, like, just on the teen side, right, when I'm working with teens, that 1 in 3 teens are experiencing some kind of teen dating violence from another peer. So I know in every space that I'm in, 1 in 3 is my stats. That's a significant amount of teens that I'm working with all the time. And my approach is always going to be a non-judgmental, calm approach to them, and to be authentic, like we've mentioned earlier, and to say that when they share their story with me, my first response is, thank you, I believe you. Because I may be the only person that has said, I believe you, to that girl, to that boy, to whoever I'm talking to. And so what I would say and encourage everyone to get comfortable saying is, I believe you, and that we believe victims in their stories, and that we don't discount it, and that our first response is, I believe you. That's what I think is important, and that's what I think will keep that conversation going and helping them heal.
I think part of it too is starting with, with adults, with women. I mean, we're the nurturers in most instances, but if we haven't been exposed to healthy relationships and healthy interactions, it's difficult to translate that to our children or our nieces and nephews or whomever we have some responsibility for. So it's not only, the children, it's the adults' responsibilities as well to show compassion, to show that this is a valuable human being that we are responsible for. And so I think we need that. Adults, particularly women, need that that self-care and that examples of good, healthy role models, so that they then can pass that on to their children. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
I said I nailed it.
Thank you. So, talking about our target population again, and if we could, I'm just going to backtrack a little. In case anybody didn't, and I don't think we got through the panel, what can be done to help us better serve our target population?
Well, I just wanted to follow up on what Kelsey started out talking about. She took the words, my same words, show up and speak out.
Yeah.
And get angry about, things that you care about. As I mentioned, I'm with the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, and we're an advocacy organization. So, we need to advocate for change. When I look at statistics, particularly for Black women and the inequities around health disparities and educational disparities, you name it, infant mortality rates right here in Ohio, we should all be angry. We should all be up in arms. And the violence, the number of deaths that have occurred in Columbus, we should all be angry. And so, while we sit here in this comfortable space, there are, people and families and children that are experiencing, trauma minute by minute. And so our silence, we're complicit in it when we turn a blind eye or we accept it as being normal. You just hear so someone was shot overnight. Okay, so then we turn the channel and move on to something else. So, we need to get up in arms about the state of the situation of where we find ourselves in. And as I mentioned, the thread of my volunteer and work history has been all about helping women be the best that they can be. But when you have all of these things that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, it's challenging, but not without hope.
Right.
Not without hope. But it is challenging. And so I think we need to figure out how we can stand up and speak out and take action in a more meaningful way.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the biggest thing is, take that step. We're here because we care. Everybody is here in this room and listening to this conversation because we care. But we have to take that caring a step further, turn that compassion into action. In whatever your passion is, getting involved, advocating, taking action, volunteering with a group, whatever it is, in whatever capacity that you can do it in, just take that step towards action. Everybody has different schedules and things like that, but I guarantee you that there is a place for you to take action in whatever you believe in.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, when we're talking about helping others, it's kind of this idea that we want to save the whole world. But that doesn't have to be the way that you are helping. It can just be, this is why I think awareness is so important, is that just being a support for somebody is helping. You don't have to solve every problem that's out there to be a helpful person. So, even if you're an individual who's working in an area where you're not directly working in any prevention fields, but that you have coworkers sometimes that seem more down than usual, letting them know that if you're open to it, they could come and talk to you if they want to. Maybe it's not something they want to do right now, but knowing that you're a resource could open them up to talking to someone in the future. And even kind of just keeping an eye out for what resources are available in your community. Are there domestic violence shelters? Are there different hotlines you can reach out to? Are there advocacy groups that you can reach out to? So if you have someone, if you're working in schools and you work with students, or a coworker or a friend who needs a different resource, you have options out there that you can kind of steer them towards so that they can get help.
Mine would be start a community garden. Conversations happen there. People get into dirt. Dirt is good. Releases neurotransmitters that have the same effects as antidepressants. They help with gut health. Gut health helps improvement in your mood, in your choices. You make good food choices, then you have good behaviors, and it strengthens communities and creates those conversations where people can make those interventions. Start a community garden.
Thank you. And I know you just made a best friend in the back.
Yes.
Would you be able to offer any strategies where people can begin to heal and understand hurt? And
Cognitive flexibility is important, where you can start to make cognitive shifts around the experiences that you have and get unstuck. I think we have the ability to make choices about how we think about things. And I think it's as simple as making those cognitive shifts happen, to where we can help people understand that we can interpret things in a new way, because sometimes we get really mired in that, and just not to let the past dictate our present or our future. So I think cognitive flexibility is important.
wow, thank you.
I think, to build on that is, always keep in mind that there may be more hurt or different types of hurt that aren't always visible to the eye, whether it's, people who may not be talking about some mental illness that they're going through and we have no idea, or, things like with the Red Cross, we respond to about 3 to 4 fires here in Columbus a day. And you just think about that and you just think, okay, well, the house is gone. A house is more than just a house. It's a home. And even if there were no injuries, which, we always are thankful when there are no injuries, but that is a traumatizing experience to watch your home burn down if you were married, your wedding album, your wedding dress. If you are 2 years old and you no longer have your Superman pajamas to go to sleep in, that is a big deal. And I often say that, when our volunteers get to the scene of a fire, we give financial assistance and things like that. I think the most important thing that we do is offer a shoulder to cry on and that hug and saying, you're not alone. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do as a community is also recognize, okay, there might be things that we're not aware of, and we need to make sure that these people know that they're not alone in what they're going through.
I think one strategy is being present when you're talking to others or engaged with others. We pass by each other so quickly, and we'll say, how are you doing? Fine, and we keep it moving. But that isn't always the truth, that we're not always fine or we're not always good. And so if we can be more present with each other to kind of recognize that someone might be struggling, because we wear this, particularly women, we wear these masks that we are resilient, that we can bounce back no matter what's thrown at us, and most of the time we can. But there's that internal, those internal challenges that we're dealing, those internal hurts that we're dealing with, and we smile and say, I'm good, I'm fine. And so, being in tune with others to help to recognize when maybe you need to ask another question, like, what's something good that happened to you today? And if I'm having difficulty coming up with one thing, that should be a signal to myself and to you when you ask me. If I can't come up with one good thing that happened to me today or that I experienced, that should be a red flag to someone, to yourself, first of all. But to be present when you are in your daily interactions. It could be a coworker, family member. Sometimes when you pass someone on the street, if you smile, maybe that may be the only smile they've had all day long. And that can really make a world of difference, and maybe they're not having to use your services.
Which would be great.
Yes, exactly. That's a question.
Yeah, you know what we'll do, if it's okay, we'll hold questions till the end so that everybody can hear you, and that's the only concern. Okay.
Also, like Linda mentioned earlier and Chelsea mentioned, is speaking out when we see something that could hurt others. So if we're recognizing that someone has said something that that it would have hurt you if they had said it to you, bringing it up to them, saying, hey, could we just talk about this? Can we just have a discussion about, why you said what you did? Or, is there another way that you could go about, addressing this? So recognizing that when someone is doing something hurtful, speaking up and taking action, and trying to help them see that there might be other ways that, they can address the problem that's going on.
Thank you.
I would second everything that's been said already. That's what happens when you go last. But I would also like to encourage that they're getting comfortable letting people know about resources that are out there and getting comfortable helping people access those resources. So for instance, at the center, we offer assessment, advocacy, and counseling, both for children and adults. And on top of that, we have trainings that we offer in the entire community at no cost to the organization, business, healthcare, school, wherever we are. We do our services for free as far as training goes. The other ones we don't. But being comfortable knowing what those are. So taking all of these suggestions, but then also being kind of like a little resource yourself and knowing where you can help point people in that right direction.
Great. Thank you. I am going to veer away from questions again. Can we talk a little, Linda, you had mentioned remaining present while you're engaging with other individuals. Are there any techniques or tools that individuals can use to help them remain present while they're interacting with other individuals?
I always encourage people to actively listen, and then they say, what is that? And when I work with teens or I work with adults, we kind of walk through, like, if you're actively listening and you're being present, you're not thinking about how am I going to respond to this person, what do I need to get done the rest of the day, what am I going to eat for dinner. I mean, these are all the thoughts that kind of run through our head. And so really being actively listening to that person and saying, like, hey, I'm here, being authentic, letting them see that if you say I believe you, that you really do believe them. It's not just a checkbox that you've checked and said, I've helped this person, but you're truly believing what you're doing.
The other, and I definitely agree with that. The other thing is not feeling like you have to have the answer or to be able to fix it for someone else. But pointing them in the area of resources where, maybe they can. But sometimes people just want someone to listen. They just want to speak the words, to verbalize what the hurt that they're experiencing or whatever it is that they're going through, and they just need to, maybe they've never had an opportunity to even say it out loud as to what they're dealing with. So, being present, listening, but not processing, well, I'm going to tell them to do X, Y, Z, or this is what they should be doing. Or if they would only do this, they wouldn't have this issue. So it's not necessarily up to us to fix someone else. We can't fix someone else. Part of that being present and being engaged fully, consciously, but not thinking that you have to have all the answers.
I think, and I talk a lot about intrapersonal intelligence. I think you need to be present with yourself as well. And be able to have moments in your day where you're not surrounded by distractions. And again, screens for me is a really big problem in society and for people individually. People aren't reading books anymore. People are being distracted constantly. There's dead time. We have to kill it with a screen or some type of distraction. So we need to allow ourselves some moments of stillness and gratitude. I encourage people to practice meditation. It doesn't have to be anything more than saying, hey Siri, set a timer for 20 minutes and just sit quietly until that alarm goes off. That's all you really need to do. And when you're present with yourself and when you have those bridges within yourself and you have that intrapersonal intelligence, then you're able to conjure that in those moments where it's required to be there for other people.
And
I'm just going to follow up on the question a previous question about what's the hardest thing to do. For me, it's doing just what you just mentioned, is to meditate or to sit and be still and not have my mind always active. That's the hardest thing.
And I think that that is when we're talking about being authentic, one of the big things I think that can help is not being afraid to apologize. Because sometimes when you are having a conversation, and even if you're trying to active listen, you might still have that running, what am I doing today? It kind of just pops into your head. So when you recognize that you are, you stop listening for a second, or you misunderstood something that the person you're talking to said, don't be afraid to apologize and say, hey, I'm really sorry. I really want to listen to you, but,
I zoned out.
Zoned out for a second. Thank you, Linda. And continuing on with the conversation, because that can help them realize, too, that you do want to listen, you do want to be there, and that everyone does make mistakes sometimes, and so you can keep that open dialogue going.
Good point.
Jordan, anything to add?
No, you know what? I think they covered it all, but I think, yep, it's, active listening, I preach that as well. I usually say it a little different way of, always listen to understand and not reply. I think that's, really key. We're all guilty of it. I mean, no one is perfect at that by any means. So it's something we can all be more conscious about.
Thank you, ladies. How can people get involved with what your agencies are doing if they wanted to volunteer? What are some ways in which we could get involved?
I'll start again. I'm ready for this question. I know, this one. So at the center, we love volunteers. We want volunteers to come help us out. And to get involved with volunteering opportunities, if you're over the age of 19, you can go online to familysafetyandhealing.org and fill out our volunteer application. Volunteers are so important because they help create the positive experiences our children and families have when they come to the center. You can also donate to our organization. We have an Amazon wish list. We have a couple other things. We really like to receive new stuffed animals or books for children. They get to take a new stuffed animal every time a child's been seen in our assessment center. They go to Abigail's Corner and they get to pick out a stuffed animal, and they get to take that home with them. And that's really healing and starting that path of healing for them. The other thing that you can do, I mentioned being a part of the Columbus Care Coalition, and so I do want to give a shout out to them. We meet on the fourth Thursday of every month from 9:30 in the morning until 11. It's a wonderful well, it will be an organization hopefully someday, but it's a wonderful coalition that comes together to say, how can we address trauma and resiliency in our community? And if you have any passion in that, we welcome you and highly encourage you to come check us out. They have information on the back table, and you can visit their website at columbus.gov/care.
Thank you.
I know that was a lot. So.
No, we have plenty of time.
So we operate 24/7, and it is all volunteers that answer the phone lines in Franklin County. So we are always looking for new volunteers. I said earlier we have a 50-hour training program, so it is a pretty intensive training program. We just want to make sure people are fully prepared when they do start answering the phone lines. So we do it twice a year. Anytime anyone is interested, they can give a call to the hotline, which is 614-221-5445. Just give us a call, let us know you're interested, and we can send out all the information to you. And then any area that you feel may be helpful to promote the hotline number. If you know that your workspace might be able to use the hotline number promoted, if you are working in schools or you have children in schools, talking with guidance counselors, seeing if they offer the number out to their students who might be in need. So any promotion of the number and then any interest in volunteering on the line is definitely ways that we like to see people get involved.
Thank you.
I'm going to come with my two hats again. The National Coalition of 100 Black Women, I mentioned that we're an advocacy organization and not a service organization, but we're always looking for presenters or speakers or and those to help with letter writing campaigns, writing your legislators around issues that we are advocating for. The other side of the Rise Sister Rise, we operate on girl power. So it's girl-centered, girl-led. But where we do need adults, that you can be silently present, silently supportive, and help to create a space for the girls to operate from a place of their own power and growth. So we encourage adults to come and to volunteer, but with the understanding that the activities and the discussions are facilitated and run and led by the girls. And so we ask adults to enter into the space without judgment, to be mindful of their body language, because we can convey our approval or disapproval just by a look or how we're sitting or what we do with our arms. And girls, they will pick up on that in a heartbeat. So when we do orientation for our volunteers, we make sure that they know that this is girl-centered, girl-led, and they operate on girl power. Now, we also encourage you to financially contribute to our Rise Sister Rise program, because it takes money to do the things that we do. But to be engaged in other ways than to volunteer, just be mindful that we're not asking you to come in and take over.
Thank you.
So there are many different ways to get involved with the Red Cross. One of the biggest things I'll say is, whatever you know about the Red Cross, it's probably much, much larger. We do so many different things, and there's a place for everyone, no matter what your schedule, or if you don't want to talk to people while you're volunteering, that's okay too. There are still support functions that have to get done, and it's still helping people. So we have many, many different volunteer opportunities. Our workforce is comprised of 94% volunteers, so we are always looking for more volunteers. You can stop and see us. We're actually just half a block down. or go to redcross.org and fill out a volunteer application. Stop in and see us, give us a call. We'll be happy to talk to you about what opportunities there are. I could go on for probably 2 hours about what we have going on, but definitely a place for everybody. We are, as always, asking for donations as well. Many people think that we're actually funded by the government. We are not. We are entirely funded on donor dollar. So I mentioned that financial assistance that we give out to families after a home fire or something like that. That completely comes from donor dollars. So if you're able, please give a donation. We greatly appreciate it, and it goes a long way. It really does. The other thing that we do is blood donations. If you're able to donate, please give blood. It can save up to 3 lives. It's a really, really big deal. You guys all saw what happened in Las Vegas. It was the blood that was on the shelves that saved people's lives in Las Vegas. And, you know, we never know what's going to happen, but, you know, blood is constantly needed. It's a constant need. And it's pretty cool. You get cookies after. I pass out every time, but most people don't. I'm a terrible blood donor. I pass out every time. I've given successfully before, but there's many different ways to get involved. Sign up, volunteer, donate, give blood, and just follow your passion.
May I add 30 seconds with the Red Cross?
30 seconds?
Only 30 seconds.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
That on behalf of the Red Cross and with the permission of Jordan, I would like to thank everyone who has donated blood and financially during the hurricane problems and all of that. But I want to mention one important thing, that people think that when the disaster comes, at that time they donate the blood. But it takes 5 days to come from your donor's arm to the patient's arm. So please donate whenever you get chance. Don't wait for the disaster. And thank you very much for what you are doing for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jindal.
That was very nice. Again, mine's going to be a little bit different. For me, it would be if you know someone that has a voice, has a story that needs to be told, please feel free to contact me. I would be happy to consider putting them on the air. Another thing that you can do, I'm always looking for feedback. You're welcome to contact me directly with your feedback about what you think is working or what you think could be working better. You're welcome to review on iTunes or Google or Stitcher if you'd like as well. You can do it there directly for everyone to see. And also, I'm always looking for people who want to share some of their skills or are looking to do resume builders. For example, I'm looking for someone to spearhead our newsletter. So if anyone has something that they want to offer, I'm always open. I'm always listening.
Great, thank you. Thank you, ladies. Before we get to questions from the audience, would you guys like to share something positive to those of us that are hurting? I don't know if you have a mantra.
I have one. You know, good times don't last, neither do bad. You know,
Okay.
everything's always going to move forward. The march's going to march on. So nothing is permanent. Everything is really temporary, even the good times. So that kind of sets you up to prepare for when these unexpected things do happen. So I think that that resiliency and that thinking, and also having optimism that there's always going to be another day, in terms of optimism is a hallmark of someone who has high emotional intelligence. So I just encourage people to know that nothing is forever, you know, not the good or the bad. So just to be optimistic about that. My high school basketball coach always told us, 2 men looked out of the same jail's bars. One saw mud, the other saw stars. So look for the stars.
Thank you.
Mine is kind of in that similar vein. Is this too shall pass.
Okay.
That sometimes we get stuck with, you know, the fear or the hurt and think that that's how it's going to be for forever. But there, you know, the other one is that joy comes in the morning. There's always, you know, a better day ahead.
Thank you.
I think, you know, and this is, you know, we hear this all the time, is you're not alone. for any West Wing fans out there, there's a story on West Wing where, man falls into a hole, one friend walks by and, passes him by, and then a priest walks by and said, I'll pray for you, and, keeps on going. And then the third person walks by, and it's his friend, and he jumps in the hole with him. And the guy in the hole said, what are you doing? Now we're both in the hole. And the friend says, yes, but I've been in here before and I know the way out. And I think that's really key is, you're not alone. We can be in the hole together, and we're going to find a way out.
Thank you.
I would like to second that. When we think about family violence, victims often feel isolated and alone in their experiences, and we're here to say that if you have experienced abuse at any point in time, you're not alone, it's not your fault, and we have resources that can help.
Yeah, something that we like to share with our callers who are thinking about suicide is that as long as you are alive, there's always hope for the future. There's always changes that will happen, good things that are still to come. Yes, there are going to be bad things too, but there are always good things. As long as we are here and continue to live and keep pushing forward, then there are going to be options available for us for things to get better.
And one thing, when working with young people, when they're going through something, it feels like it's the end of the world, because they really don't have anything to necessarily compare it with. And so if you could share a story or something that you've overcome yourself to show to them that you have experienced, hurt or, trauma in your lives too, but how you dealt with it and came out on the other side, I think that it helps to make it real for them as opposed to, sometimes the platitudes that we say about, this too shall pass. They may need a little more substance to go along with that, to make it more real and make it more relevant for them without, compromising anything that sharing anything that's too personal for you. But if you can think of a story or an experience where you thought that, there was no way out, and you found a way, or that someone was there to help you find your path, then, that speaks to them on a different level.
Very encouraging. Thank you for all your words. I think at this point we'll open it up to questions. I'm going to ask that the individuals with the questions come up to the microphone so that the viewing audience will be able to hear the question as well.
No, it's not so much.
You can also meet with the individuals afterwards if you'd like to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a question? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Go ahead. Well, I'll ask them all.
I guess I don't know what to do with me. You're a me, you're a me, you're a me, you're a me, and you're a me. And that's so overwhelming. I'm a radio host. I came from trauma to be a radio host. I took my radio and became an advocate. But my advocacy is women and kids. I started off in Columbus with watching an apartment burn down. That was one of my first media pictures. Does that make sense? I'm almost just overwhelmed. How do we combine all these gifts together to help you and you and you and you and you? I'm just, that was my question. I'm like, God, how can I fit in all of that and make a difference? How can I get better at what I do and make a difference when that's together is my passion? And believe it or not, I sat down at a table and talked about this yesterday, that we have to plug into all the things that we need into one place. We can't just say, well, this is what we do, and it's like through one tunnel. I experienced sitting at school thinking about suicide. Growing up right here in Columbus, I've worked on the prayer line and broke the chain of suicide at World Harvest Church. I'm just a you. It's incredible. And thank you. tell us how to plug all this in to one place where we can all utilize it in the community. I thought that was the most important thing you said, that we have to find a way to reach everybody else and do it compassionately and listen. We have to do that. And I think it's a huge problem. People are not looking us in the eyes. That's why I'm standing here looking you directly in the eyes so you can see that this is real. This is real for us. Some of us are just out here fighting, and we're doing it by ourselves, and we're trying to figure out how to put all these pieces together, and we need you to help us put these pieces together. So it's a miracle. Does that make sense? Look at her, she's looking.
But I think that, you know, if I look at us here, I envision those extension cords where they have those plugs, right? And I think we're all currently plugged in, and we are doing what you're saying. And I thank Gail and Allison for having us here today, because we are all plugged in here together in this moment. And I don't know if you're broadcasting that somewhere with the video camera, or you're recording it to give it for later date.
Yes.
So I think that efforts like these, like what the City of Columbus is doing, literally has us all plugged in here today and providing that. So I'm glad that it's resonating with you. It's an important day for me to be here today, and I think everyone here feels the same. And they do this monthly, right? So there's a lot more of these, and I think that, you know, if you feel like there's something you want to share in terms of your story, certainly offer yourself to be one of the people plugged in here today. I mean, that's every month, so please, yeah, we can all be a part of this too, but I love the fact that they're making this initiative happen. It is on a monthly basis, and it is being recorded, and it's going to continue. So this legacy will continue. Yeah.
I want to say thank you for sharing your story with us and being brave and courageous to do that, and just acknowledging how much it takes to come up here. So thank you. Thank you for that. I would also like to plug, when we think about, you said coming together, please pick up one of the Columbus Care Coalition lovely flyers. We want you to be at the table. Not to sound like an advertisement or a commercial, but I mean, I sit on the steering committee as part of the leadership representing family violence, but around the table is immigration and refugee, is community violence, is all these different facets, but we're all dealing with trauma, we're all dealing with resiliency. So come be a part of that so that we can all grow together, so we can address this in that multifaceted way that you're talking about.
Thank you so much.
I'll just add, I don't know if you've heard the saying, you know, how do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. It's difficult to try to navigate or to manage all those pieces and parts of things that you care so passionately about, without losing yourself. And so several of us have mentioned about self-care, which is very, very important when you care about so many different things and you care so deeply about so many different pieces and parts. Not just you. I mean, we all, I find I have to check myself too. Like, what do I really physically, mentally, emotionally have the capacity to do, to give today? And it's a day-by-day, a moment-by-moment thing. But, you know, it's helpful and it's encouraging to connect yourself with others who are doing the work. It doesn't mean that you personally have to do everything, but just being a part and being present with others who are doing the work is energizing and provides hope, for me anyway, without me feeling like I have to jump in and do everything and do it all, because I can't. I don't have the expertise, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, whatever. So it's just, you know, being mindful of, you know, what is my small piece that I can do today, in the next 6 months, but just taking it, you know, one kind of small piece at a time, because it can be overwhelming. It can just be overwhelming.
What I was going to say with that is what she said before. You have to
yourself. Exactly.
I stay concentrated,
Mhm.
so it helps me. I don't
Mhm.
watch TV. You don't keep putting all this junk in, then there's no junk.
Junk to give out, to put out.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
powerful.
And just a small addition to that is also realizing that you have to rely on others. So giving yourself over a little bit to recognize you can't do everything all alone. So relying on others to help.
Good afternoon. I thank you ladies so much. I think this is so great. My question is, because I spent a lot of time working with young ladies in Columbus at what was called, I'm no longer there, so, and it's been a while. But it was a group home with with young ladies. And one of the things that I saw was that young women, it's very hard to get them to trust you after they've been through a lot of trauma. So I guess my question is mainly to you based on what you were saying, because you said that you say things like, I believe you, and while that is excellent, because that is one of the biggest things, when you say those type of things, how do young people know that you mean what you say? Because you also mentioned like checking it off a box. And that's something that I know for a fact, working with African American young women, we see it as you checking it off a box. This is just what you have to do. This is just what you're saying. We want to know that you really mean what it is that you say. So how is it that you and your organization make sure, as far as follow-up, as far as letting us know that that's truly what you mean? I guess that would be.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you.
Rosemont, I'm sorry.
Rosemont. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Okay, okay.
Yes.
I take the time to sit with them. So if that story takes 5 minutes or it takes an hour, I take it and I just make time for that. And that's how I do. And I sit with them. So if they're sitting, I'm sitting. If they're standing, I'm on that same level. So it's a lot about my nonverbals. And when I say not just checking off the box, I mean like feeling it. When I say I believe you, I feel that in my gut, in my heart, in my soul. I mean what I say. And I take that, and we talk about when you say something, that's your word. And so they know that from me, and we set that safe space. And they know that I'm not going to say something that I don't mean. And it takes a long time. It's not, it's not always real quick. And I think it's consistency and being there, showing up, and saying, you matter, I care about you, and that's that. There was a student last night, or not last night, the night before, I heard about a student that was stabbed, and I was at an after-school program yesterday. And the girls were friends of this student, and it was really difficult for them to process. And I just sat with them. And the one couldn't talk to me, but we have kind of like an arm bump thing, like we just kind of bump arms, and I know what that means. And that's our thing, and that was my I believe you, and I'm here. And we just bumped arms, and I said, I know, and I just left it at that. And she was okay with that. And so that's my style, but we all have different styles. But I think it's being consistent. I think it's showing up and saying, when you say it, believe it. You need to believe it yourself. That is the biggest thing. Don't say something you don't believe.
I'd like to add something to that, because I love the authenticity, and that's very important. But for people who are in helping fields, if you've been working in the profession for a long time, compassion fatigue is a real thing. And you eventually get numb to it. And so even though you think you're trying with your best possible intentions to say, I believe you, I'm here for you, I'm here to help, there's nothing left for you. So that's why sometimes you don't have that to offer. So for people who are caregivers, when they start to understand and experience that they are going through that compassion fatigue, it's really important to take a step back and like recharge. Recharge is so important. You have to have something within you to be able to give it. So if you are ever feeling that kind of numbness, that's a sign of compassion fatigue. It's time to take care of you.
Yes, I 100%. I'm so glad you said that,
Yeah.
because it's two hands. Like
Right.
you have to have both. Like,
Right.
you have to be able to recharge to give out.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
We have one last question. We have about 5 more minutes. So before we offer up the last question, I want to personally thank Commissioner Fran Frazier and Commissioner Dr. Jindal for attending, as well as everybody in the audience. Maggie, who is lying down in the back. I wish we could get her on TV. She's our pet therapy dog. If she'd like to come up here, we'd be happy to put her on television. I thank all of you ladies so, so very much, and I will present us with the last question. Thank you.
Give me a second. I'm going to try to hold this up so I'm not bending over. In the general category of helping others, I may have a rather what seems to be a rather unusual take on that because I am on the very high functioning end of the autism spectrum. I do things as simple as helping somebody who's clearly trying to handle too many bags of groceries at once, and I've literally gotten people complimenting the person who I help, like, "Oh, you're such a nice person," and I'm like, "Why should this be exceptional?" I mean, as far as I can make out, the general attitude of society is that normal people don't do this for strangers, and that attitude baffles me. Why is such a simple principle as you see somebody needs a hand, you give them a hand, be so exceptional? And why does it take a person like me to see how obvious it should be?
I think it's fear. I think people are afraid how it might be received. They're afraid that they might get rejected. They're afraid that people might misconstrue their actions. I think a lot of that hesitancy is around fear.
And I think some of it's around what we've been talking about today is hurt that they may have experienced themselves. And so there's that lack of trust of others or of others' intentions when they have been traumatized themselves. But I think I've found that more people are receptive to that type of kindness than not. And that we should maybe focus more on those who are willing to accept help and give help than we are the times that we may be rejected. That the good outweighs the bad.
And keep doing that. Keep helping with those groceries.
That's right.
Again, thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. If I could, coming up is our final Lunch and Learn, which will be a celebration of community. It should be very exciting. We have Reiki, we have therapy dogs, we have open dialogue regarding hurt and ways to heal the hurt. So again, thank you so much, everybody, and have a blessed day.